Okay, so back to the story. My grandpa ends up coming in 11th grade. So, like I said, 10th grade, I lost my starting position. The first game of the season, or during the summer, I wasn't playing because I had a sprained ankle. Then a transfer student came in. He started starting over me. And then when I started playing again, the coach started playing the transfer student over me as a starting point guard. My dad was furious. My dad said, "This coach is a fucking idiot. How, you were the starting point guard as a freshman. You won the CAF championship. This is disrespectful. You need to transfer." And I told him, "I don't want to transfer. I want to continue playing at Harvard Westlake." But at the same time, I was like, but maybe I'll transfer. Because at the same time, I was a little bit upset about it. But at the same time, I also knew that my shot was messed up. I wasn't so mad at the coach like my dad was. Like, I was like, in my mind, I think a part of me was like, I don't really blame the coach. Like, I'm not shooting well. I'm not. So I was like, whatever. But my dad was very upset. And my dad was like, "You have to transfer." And he was just furious. He said, "If I go to any of your games, I'm going to kill the coach. So I can't go to your games." Then, as I said, the first game of the season, I was the leading scorer. Second game of the season, we're playing against OJ Mayo, the number one player in the country. He's guarding me. I score 4 3-pointers. I make 4 3-pointers in a row on him. So then my dad hears about this. Then my dad goes to the next game, even though he said he would never go to any of my games that year. And then the rest of the season, it was kind of the same story, where it would be like I would play bad the next game, and then my dad would be like, he'd be upset, and then he wouldn't go to my next game. But then then the next game, he'd read in the newspaper, I made the game-winning shot. So then my dad would go to the next game because he. So in my mind, I start thinking to myself, wow, my dad's kind of superficial. He only goes to my games when he's here and I'm playing good. Now my grandpa says no, it's because when you were playing good, you were happy, and then you treated your dad well. There might be an element to that, but I don't really think that that's true. Like, I think that the problem with me and my dad really just had to do with I was trying to fix my shot and we were trying to figure it out. Even this whole time, even when I had those good games, my shot was still messed up. And we're trying to figure out what was the problem. We didn't know it was a shoot-away machine. I think it's that simple. It's that basic. So, but I played pretty decent my 10th grade year. Even though I wasn't the starting point guard, I played decent. And then my 11th grade year, I was the starting shooting guard. But my 10th grade year, I played kind of pretty well. And by the end of the 10th grade year, my dad started going to all my games because, like, during the playoffs, I played really well. And then my dad heard about the first game of the playoffs when I made a lot of points, and then he came to the whole rest of the playoffs. And I remember my dad was actually kind of happy. But we were still fighting because we were trying to figure out what was wrong with my shot, and we didn't know. Now, I didn't get to this, but during this whole period, this is when the abuse started to happen. So I think it was during that summer during my 10th grade year when I lost my starting spot. I remember my dad and I were in the backyard and we were shooting. And my dad would always, like I said, my whole life, my dad came to every one of my games. He shot with me every single day. So I'm shooting in the backyard, picking the ball off a rack. And I remember my dad was like, "Ryan, you're not shooting sideways. You're shooting with your left foot in front of your right also." He's like, what the hell are you doing? Now, looking back at it, I know exactly what was happening. I was picking the ball off a rack, and it's going to make you do that. But at the time, I didn't know that. So I'm just like, "Dad, I'm just shooting the ball. I'm just not thinking like I always was. I'm just shooting the ball." But my dad was like, "You're shooting. Every time I fix your shot, you go back to shooting wrong. You go back to shooting square." So he's getting frustrated. I know looking back at it, when my dad would fix my shot, he would pick the ball off a rack and he would pass to me. And it had nothing to do with me changing anything. I just was not thinking. And when I would catch his passes, I would automatically align to what was correct after enough times. But then I would go back to picking the ball off a rack. He couldn't compute. Wasn't aware. I understand. Like, if not everybody can see things the way that they are, and he wasn't able to discern what was really going on. And he sees me picking the ball off a rack, and he's thinking to himself, "Why don't you just shoot sideways, like you shoot when you're good?" He didn't know it was because I was picking the ball off a rack, and I was unconscious, and I didn't know what was going on, and he didn't know what was going on. So I'm picking the ball off a rack, I'm shooting square, and my dad, I remember at the time I was trying to be very, very good because I knew my dad was on edge because I just lost a starting spot. This is my 10th grade year, and my dad was furious, and I knew he was on edge. And I was just picking the ball off the rack, shooting, and then my dad was like, I remember he just got up and he was like, "Fuck it, I give up. You fucking suck. I give up. You every time I fix it," he's like, "I give up. That's it." and they started to walk in. Now, remember, this is 10th grade year. Remember, this happened during the summer, so keep in mind that the first game of the year, I was leading scorer. Second game, I made 4 3-points against OJ Mayo. But keep that in mind, though. So he says, I give up. I'm not going to help you anymore. So then he walks in. But then I tell him, I try to stop him. I'm like, Dad, I need you just shoot me for 15 more minutes, please. Like, let's try to fix it. Like, let's try to fix this. And he's like, no. Every time I fix it, you go back to shooting wrong. And he's like, there's no use anymore. He's like, you suck now. I'm not helping you anymore. So then like I said, my whole life, he helped me all the time. Now, again, my grandpa who dismisses me, who invalidates what I try to say. I told my grandpa after college, I told my grandpa about this. And I told him, how, my grandpa told me, like, Ryan, why did you expect your dad to help you with your shot? Your dad never played basketball. He played water polo. Like, why would you even expect? He tries to make me into the bad guy again. But then I tried to explain to my grandpa, because he's trying to be like, Ryan, you must be stupid. Like, you're the retard here. You're the one who doesn't realize that your dad didn't know anything about basketball. Why, you're the problem. And I'm like, Grandpa, my dad helped me that was why I was a great shooter, because I never thought about my shot. I never had to. You know why? Because my dad was always there, and he always, if there was ever any problem, he would fix it. And basically, he would just say, Ryan, shoot more sideways. Or like, let's say I was shooting with my legs too far apart. My dad would just tell me, Ryan, your legs are too far apart. And I would put my legs a little closer, and I would start making my shots again. I never had to think ever, because if there was ever any problem at all, my dad would say it. He would pick it out for me. But there was never any serious problem, because I was automatic and unconscious, so there was nothing ever drastic that he needed to change, just little tiny stuff, so I never had to think. But now at this point, I'm picking the ball off a rack, and there's some drastic problems going on. I'm shooting way wrong, and I didn't know it was because of the rack. Now I know for a fact it was because of the rack. But so my grandpa would tell me after college, he's like, well, why did you expect your dad to help you? That's why, because my dad helped me my whole life. And he was the reason I was a good shooter, because he was the one who told me, don't do what the coaches say. Shoot sideways like you shoot. So that's why. But so I tell my grandpa, I go to my dad, I'm like, Dad, please, just shoot me for 15 more minutes. So then I don't remember exactly how it happened, but anyways, I think that my dad probably says something like, if you tell me that one more, if you keep bothering me, I'm going to kick your ass or something like that. So I'm like, come on, Dad, just shoot me for a little bit longer. And then he was like, so I don't remember exactly how it happened, but my dad probably just grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and like held me in a chokehold. And probably just held me really hard, and he was just like, are you going to ask me again? Are you going to ask me again? Now, keep in mind, at this point, my dad had never spanked me in my life. My mom and dad had never touched me ever in my life. I'd never had any form of discipline ever. Never been in timeout. I'd never been hit, never been spanked, nothing. Now, now my dad has me in a headlock, and he's holding me like this. He says, are you going to ask me again? And I'm like, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I was probably like, okay, I'm not going to ask you again. And then he probably let me go, and I was probably like, come on, Dad, please, just 15 more minutes. And then he did it again. And then so that was the pattern that started to happen. And that's how the abuse started to happen. So then it's the 10th grade. Like I said, that summer, things are not going so good. But, and I remember that was when my mom started to medicate me. Now, without my knowledge. So my dad and I start to fight about my shot. This is going into 10th grade. And then, we're fighting. And again, remember the problem was, I'm like, Dad, I need your help. Just shoot with me for 15 more minutes. Just like, look at my shot. And my dad's like, no, you suck now. I'm not going to help you anymore. But I need his help because I didn't know how to fix it. And I didn't know it was a shoot-away machine. So this is a terrible situation for me. So then my mom's like, okay, well, Ryan has obsessive compulsive disorder. He's obsessive. So she's like, in her mind, she's like, okay, we have to medicate him. So this is where the contempt starts happening. And this is where what I call it this is where, in my opinion, where the dehumanization started to happen. This is when they started becoming contemptuous of me and started to develop a hatred for me. Because remember, before this, they loved me. I was the best. Everything was perfect, right? Growing up, I was the number one player in the country. Everything was going really good. My dad thought I was going to play in the NBA. They were happy with me. Everything was good. And I've mentioned this before. They didn't like my sister very much. They liked me a lot. So, but at this point, my mom's like, remember, my mom was very upset. Why aren't you scoring? Why aren't you shooting the ball? Why are you missing all your shots? You know, you're a scorer. What's wrong with you? So then, and now my dad and I are fighting. So then my mom's like, okay, well, Ryan has obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, I'm not going to lie. My whole life I was obsessive. Yes, it's true. And I always had kind of like obsessive compulsive rituals and stuff. But I know that there was more to it than just I was someone who had a mental illness. I didn't have a mental illness, first off. It was a situational problem with the shoot-away machine. But yes, I am obsessive, and I did really want to fix my shot, and I didn't know what was wrong with it. So then my mom's thinking in her mind, okay, well, what we can do is we can medicate him, and we can to get him to stop. But so what she did was she didn't tell me, and she started putting some sort of medicine in my drinks. So she would give me milkshakes. I remember this is going into my 10th grade year. This is the first time they ever started medicating me. So going into 10th grade year, she started to put, I guess she would like break a pill apart and then put the pill inside my milkshakes. So my dad, like after I would work out, my mom would be like, okay, time for your milkshake, Ryan. So I would start drinking milkshakes. I remember one day, like I started feeling really bad. And I was feeling like weird. And I know now I had what's called akathisia or something, where you can't sit still. And it's like a byproduct of taking those types of medicines. They were giving me some sort of thing to try to tranquilize me, I think, because I was trying to get my dad to continue to help me. So, and they wanted me to stop. They wanted me to just settle down. So then I remember I was like feeling like crap. And then I remember I looked at the milkshake and I saw little beads on the top. And I remember it went through my mind. I was like, you know, to me it was like, my mom's giving me these milkshakes all the time, which she never did before. And she's kind of being weird about it because like my dad and I would be fighting and my dad would be like, Marla, milkshakes? And so it's like they're stupid. Like they didn't do a good job of hiding it. So then I was like, I think that my mom's putting medicine in my drink. It was like kind of obvious to me. So then I remember I just was like, I was feeling really bad. And then I was like, and I knew that they were putting some medicine in my drink. So I was like, Mom, I was like, I feel terrible. I feel like I'm dying. And my mom was like, and then my dad was like, right, Marla, how much did you put in this milkshake? And I was like, okay, yeah, it's pretty obvious at this point. So then I remember I went to a wall and I punched the wall and I broke the wall. And then I just started like laying down. And then my dad was like, Marla, how much did you put in this milkshake? And I was like, are you guys putting medicine in my milkshakes? And they're like, and then my mom was like, yes, we're putting medicine in your milkshakes. And I was like, okay, well, you know, freaking stop doing that. So then she stopped putting medicine in my milkshakes because she was like, okay, that's dangerous. We were maybe messing you up a little bit. Then, like I said, the first game of the season, I was the leading scorer. Second game, I scored 4 3-pointers against OJ Mayo. Then the rest of the 10th grade year, I played pretty good. And then going into the 11th grade year, my dad and I are still it's the same problem. Like, I'm doing decent, but my shot's really messed up. And I know it's because of the shoot-away machine. So 11th grade year, I'm the starting shooting guard. But my shot's messed up. Things are not going that good. And that was the year that my grandpa came in. So my dad and I are fighting, trying to fix my shot. There's problems. My dad comes out. I remember one time my grandma came in from Hawaii. And this is just another example illustrating my point is I was picking the ball off of the rack and I was shooting bad. Then my dad came out. And my dad started passing to me. And I was shooting good. And then my dad was like, see, I'm the shot doctor. And then my grandma was laughing like, yeah, he's the shot doctor. Now, looking back at it, like I remember that, I have that memory vividly. I remember what happened there. And I know what happened was my dad was passing to me and I wasn't picking the ball off a rack. So I was going to move into shots in a more natural way and in a way that's going to make me shoot sideways and shoot well. But when I'm picking the ball off a rack, I'm not. To me, it's obvious what was going on, but somehow he didn't see it. And I'm not going to say somehow because I just know he didn't see what was going on. He didn't know. And another thing is, I'm going to get into this too, is I remember my dad tried to fix my shot and he told me to do something that's completely wrong. I'm not going to go into details of what he told me to do. But again, he wanted me to shoot sideways. But I know the reason why I shot sideways was how I moved into the shots. And you're going to shoot automatically correctly if you move into shots the correct way, but you can't do that picking off a rack. But now I'm picking the ball off of a rack, and my dad's saying shoot sideways. So my dad started to artificially make me shoot sideways. So I picked the ball off a rack, and my dad would have me like turn into the shot in a way to make me sideways. He told me to do something with my feet that's exactly incorrect. So now it's not just that my shot is getting messed up. Now my dad's telling me to do something wrong. Looking back at it, I know it's wrong. I'm not going to go into details because, again, I don't want to make good shooters think, but it's something that maybe a pigeon-toed shooter would do, but I'm not pigeon-toed. So basically, he completely destroyed it, even more than it could have been destroyed. So now, like, things are just deteriorating beyond imagination. And at the time, I only figured this out when I looked at videos of when I was younger, in college, my sophomore year of college, after I quit basketball, my sophomore year of college. I started looking at videos and I figured out what happened. But it took me a long time to figure that out. But at the time, I had no idea. But I know that this is what occurred. So he's telling me to do the wrong thing. Things are deteriorating worse and worse. Then we're getting in worse and worse fights. Things are going bad. It's the same story. A lot of times he would go in, I give up. Or it wasn't just that. He would not go to my games. And I told you guys how I started to get upset because I'd be like, you only go to my games when I'm playing good. Why don't you go to all my games? Or what, you seem superficial. And then my dad, so that's leading to problems with that. Now, again, my grandpa tried to be on my dad's side later, and he would say, no, he went to games when you were playing good because you were happy and you treated him well. And it's more complex than that. But so this is what's going on. There's fights going on. There's problems. And the other part of the fights was I would tell my dad, please go to my games. And the reason why I wanted to go to my games, it wasn't because like I wanted to have his support, like him in the stands, like smiling and stuff. It was because I wanted him to look at my shot and help me fix it. That's all I really cared about. I just wanted to fix my shot. And I wanted to know what was wrong with it. I didn't know at the time. I figured out in college. And it even took me a long time after that to really, I had to study a lot of videos to kind of figure this stuff out. It took me years of studying videos to kind of figure this stuff out. And even to this day, I know that unless I have more videos, I'm not really going to understand exactly how I shot when I was younger, when I was considered the best in the country. But at least I know a lot more than I did at that time in high school when I didn't know anything. And I was just confused and shooting incorrectly because I was picking the ball off of a rack. So, and if it wasn't for the rack, none of this would have ever happened because I would have continued to shoot automatically, unconsciously. There would have never been any of these problems. And that's the thing is, like, my mom wants to think like, oh, well, you were just mentally ill and it was obsessive compulsive. And none of this would have happened if it wasn't for the shoot away machine. And I want them to get that through their head. Like, it really all boils down to that, in my opinion. So there's problems going on. There's fights going on. And I want my dad to go to my game so he can look at my shot. But then my dad stops going to my games, or he would go only after he heard I played a really good game. And so then my grandpa comes in from Kauai because things were going really bad. And at this point, my dad's, like I said, it wasn't ever too much abusive, but mainly what he would do is he would just grab me, usually put me in a chokehold and throw me to the ground and just hold me in a chokehold. And sometimes he would bang me into the ground harder if I would, continue. So he never really abused me too bad, but this is kind of the gist of what he would do to me. But it was starting to get, he was doing that a lot. So he'd never touched me before, but now that's starting to happen. So then my grandpa comes in from Kauai. And then, and basically the reason why my grandpa came in was because my dad was like, I can't have Ryan in the house anymore because, there's too much conflict. Basically now go live with your grandpa. So my grandpa had a condo in Malibu. He bought a condo in Malibu, and I went to start staying with my grandpa. This is in the 11th grade. And I would go back and forth from living with my grandpa to going back to my house. So that's what's going on in 11th grade. And at that point, I was a starting shooting guard on varsity. But again, I'm a shooting guard, but I'm not able to shoot. And I know why, but at the time I didn't know why. So that's what's going on at that point. Then my senior year. Okay, well then I all I know is at some point during that year, one of the coaches or maybe it was I know during the 9th grade, one of the coaches at UC San Diego came to my games, and he saw this is when I was a starting point guard on varsity and we won the CAF championship. I remember the coach at UC San Diego told me he went to the championship game, and he said that he saw me playing and he was like, if I can get a player like Ryan Merkel at our school, we were gonna be really good. So he had seen me play the championship game my freshman year. So he had started recruiting me then. He wanted me to play then. So then in 11th grade, the coach at UC San Diego was like, even though at that time I was playing bad, they had remembered me from before when I was good. So they were like, okay, we want, Ryan, we want you to play at UC San Diego. So at 11th grade, I already determined I was going to play at UC San Diego. Then the 12th grade season, my shot's still messed up. My game's still messed up. I'm going to get into this.